Hello, and welcome to the Cosmic Prayer this week. I'm just feeling so filled up and can't wait actually for the super guest this week to shine her light as she does in everything that she does. Dr. Petra Weldes is the spiritual director of CSL Dallas, and she has been since 1998. And Dr. Petra is a gifted speaker and teacher and visionary who's created a dynamic spiritual community in Dallas and empowering and transforming many individuals' lives. Her purpose is to transform, and her mission is to grow people, communities, and ideas. I love this. Dr. Petra has co-authored 3 books with Reverend Dr. Christian Sorensen, and we're going to be talking about these books in a moment, and is a regular contributor to the Science of Mind magazine, amongst many other amazing things that Dr. Petra is involved with. She is here right now to inspire us on her idea of prayer. Welcome, Dr. Petra, to the Cosmic Prayer. It's so great to be here with you today.
Thank you, Laura. I'm really delighted that you asked, and I'm happy to be here with you and talk about one of my favorite topics.
Why is it your favorite topic? One of them.
Well, because for me personally, while I have spent many years meditating, I had the privilege of being taught how to meditate by a monk from Paramahansa Yogananda's ashram. It's really in spiritual mind treatment, in affirmative prayer, that my deepest spiritual revelations have come. And my deepest experiences of spiritual truth have become embedded in my consciousness. So for me, prayer isn't just for things or to experience things. My experience of a lifetime of affirmative prayer has changed everything for me. And I would love for other people to know about that and use it.
I love what you're saying, and I just want to ask you, because there are a couple of ways that we can delve into spiritual mind treatment. And for anybody that's watching or viewing now or later on, spiritual mind treatment is the process or the way that we pray, where we know that we're not begging or asking or kind of pleading for an outcome out there. We're changing our own idea of our own consciousness and our own awareness. And as we do that, we expand into the knowing of how flipping amazing we are and that it's already here. So right. I'm just interested for you, when was the first time that you discovered spiritual mind treatment, and how over the span of that time, over the years, how that has shifted and changed for you? How did you use it when you first started using it?
Well, to tell you the truth, like everybody else who learns about affirmative prayer or spiritual mind treatment, my first response was, what? You're going to tell me how to pray? I don't think so. My second response was, why do I have to do it like this? Why do I have to do it in such a formula? What is so important about that? Can't I just pray the way that I want to pray? Well, clearly the way that I was praying wasn't working. And I'll never forget a teacher saying to me, look, if you were going to play the piano, the very first thing you would do is you would learn about music theory, and you would learn about scales, and you would learn how to play the specific scales on the particular instrument that you are going to play, because every instrument obviously has those notes in a different way. Piano, violin, flute are all very different. And so the form, spiritual mind treatment as a form, is nothing more than giving a framework and I guess that's the best way to say it, a framework that allows the process of consciousness shifting to happen. So after I got over my, I don't know, what should we call it, my arrogance that I believed that the only way I could pray was the way that I knew how to pray, and I began really learning about affirmative prayer and spiritual mind treatment, then the next thing I did was talk about it. And I didn't actually use it. I talked about it. So I would say it took me a number of years to actually begin sitting down and doing the work. For me, I had to start doing it out loud, because doing it quietly in my own mind, like in a meditation process, I would just get lost. And I would start doing the process of expressing what I know about the universe and expressing my sense of being a part of that, and then beginning to describe the end result that I was looking for. And the next thing I know, I'm like making my shopping list and I'm thinking about what I have to do tomorrow. And I'm like, wait, that's not part of my treatment. That's not part of my prayer. So I started doing them out loud. And that really, like, that forced me to stay focused on the spiritual work I was doing. I actually have a really dear friend who did all of her prayer work when she first started. She literally did it on the computer. She did it as stream of consciousness on the computer. And she said it was the same thing. It kept her focused on the process, right? And prayer is the spiritual mind treatment that we work with is a process to shift our consciousness to move into alignment with that which is already true. And of course, as we're working with that, everything that gets in the way in our normal life gets in the way. And so that anything that helps us just stay focused with it and follow through on our own thought process is what then allows us to come to that place of shift in consciousness. And so for me, starting to do it out loud began to make the difference. And then over the years, what I have come to realize is that, well, first of all, I learned that I could do spiritual mind treatment about anything. I could do prayer about anything, not just like to manifest stuff, which when I first started, I really needed. Like, I needed to be able to pay my rent, and I needed to be able to get rid of some really deep-seated patterns and addictions, and I did a lot of healing with it. But I began to realize that I could actually do this around my life, the kind of life I wanted to have. And so over time, the kinds of things that I would use prayer for and use spiritual mind treatment for shifted. Although, I mean, I still do it. When I had COVID, I did spiritual mind treatment for healing. My wife, my granddaughter, and I all had COVID together at the same time. And we were doing a lot of spiritual mind treatment that it would be easy and pass quickly, and that we would be, fully healthy. And so what I prayed about for changed. And then what I noticed that what I prayed about changed. And I began realizing that if I could do prayer for myself and for other individuals, that I could in fact do prayer for issues of the world. And that my prayer was just as important. And I could do prayer around my experience of cosmic consciousness. I could do spiritual mind treatment to experience more oneness. I could do spiritual mind treatment to open to my intuition. I began realizing that prayer wasn't just to fix things or heal things or even manifest things, but was about really opening a whole opening process for me. And it was only in retrospect, looking back over really a lifetime, I've been using spiritual mind treatment for 40 years now, that I realized that it's in the process of remembering truth and remembering that that's who I am, and then seeing how that would manifest if it were all aligned up, how utterly that shifted and embedded in my consciousness as spiritual identity. And that changed everything. That was the thing ultimately that changed everything. And I did not experience, I mean, I love meditating, but I did not get to that point through meditation. I got to that point through my work with spiritual mind treatment.
Do you believe that meditation can support spiritual mind treatment in allowing that focus?
I do, because I think ultimately that's the most important. That's certainly how I was trained in meditation. I was trained in a very classic Eastern meditation, that the fundamental purpose of meditation is to teach us how to examine what's going on in our minds and how to become aware of awareness itself. how to
Yes.
become conscious of consciousness itself, right? That it is fundamentally a discipline. And only in the process of the discipline do we then begin to have some measure of control of the thoughts and feelings and bodily sensations that are distracting us, letting them pass so that consciousness begins to come to the forefront. And of course, it is in the experience of consciousness. Well, consciousness and cosmic consciousness are identical because it's consciousness,
Yeah.
right? You can't parse out consciousness. It's, and so the moment consciousness and awareness come to really reveal themselves to us, we are in that moment beginning to experience the universe, the universal consciousness. And that all of that supports the discipline that's required in a prayer practice. And so often I do
Yes.
my meditation, and out of that place, then I go right into my spiritual mind treatment.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's how I practice spiritual mind treatment. I mean, I know there are many times that I will go just straight into spiritual mind treatment, like we did before this show here today.
Mm-hmm.
And yet I know also when I'm centered and grounded, then I can get to that place of doing it actually in my mind and not having to speak it out, because
Right.
I'm already
Right.
involved in that
Right.
process. And it's again, though, the whole thing is practice. The whole thing, I believe, the whole thing is practice.
Yes. And I would want to say that I think one of the fallacies about prayer and spiritual mind treatment is that we have to be in that place to do a spiritual mind treatment.
Right.
When in fact, the purpose of a spiritual mind treatment is to get us to that place. And
Yes.
so if we just wait until we've done a meditation and we feel really centered to do a spiritual mind treatment, we are missing 75% of what spiritual mind treatment can do for us.
Yes.
Now,
Wow.
right after we've done a lot of practice, then that's really beautiful. But I see too many people who are starting out in the practice and they think, well, I'm not centered enough to do a spiritual mind treatment. I'm not centered enough to do a prayer. No, 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 no. The whole point of the framework of the structure is to work with each of the stages until there's something within us that begins to shift and go, oh, right, wait, I think that is actually true. And then we can move to the second stage. And then, oh, that's right. If we work on it enough, all of a sudden there's this moment where we're like, yeah, I am a part of that. It's not just words. It's not about the words, right? It's about how it lands and moves us into that space. And then when we can do our third stage and we're talking about describing the end result that we want to experience, right? I mean, I've been known, well, on the one hand, I've been known to do that for 45 minutes all at once, because when I start out, I don't actually believe that I have it. I don't believe that it's possible. And the entire work of the spiritual mind treatment of the prayer is to bring me into that alignment. And sometimes, quite truthfully, I have to pray over days and weeks and even months to fully embrace and accept that the things that I'm saying in my spiritual mind treatment are actually the truth with a capital T, and my experience of that truth demonstrated in the particular way that I am working with it. And so that is the point of the process. The point of the process, right, is to move us into that place. And so, yeah, the best time to do spiritual mind treatment, in my opinion, or the most useful time when we're first starting to practice, is to do our spiritual mind treatment when we don't feel it. As we
Yes.
grow, Laura, as you said, there comes that point where it becomes so part of our daily practice, meditation and spiritual mind treatment, that we would never consider not doing it. And that, yeah, that's just a mind-bogglingly amazing practice.
And as you're speaking and sharing all of this, my mind is going to Dr. Ernest Holmes, because the revelation of this technique of prayer, of spiritual mind treatment, is I could study this, how he came up with this, how he understood really what Jesus was about, what Jesus was teaching in in a very undefined way, and yet he was showing us that we can use ourselves, we can be the vessel for allowing consciousness, or for allowing our understanding of consciousness opening up. And I really love what you have just said about, this can take weeks or months or even years, because we're not, there's a lot online. There's, I'm kind of OD'd with this word manifesting. For me, it's like, well, yes, we're manifestors. Life is manifesting itself in every moment. And yet, to really shift our consciousness, that's a whole different thing. That's like not just waiting for something to drop from the sky.
Yes.
It's actually opening up to be in another perspective of our lives, another experience of our lives. And that takes work to do that. It's not just a quick fix, is it? Although it can. I'm not suggesting things don't happen just like that. But
right, but without the shift in consciousness, you have to keep manifesting those quick fixes.
Yes.
Right. That's the sort of the growing stage of our understanding, is that at first, as I said, when I first started doing spiritual mind treatment, I did actually need the $1,000 to pay the rent. Yeah. And I did actually need to fix the really horrific beliefs that I had created out of an abusive family, so that I would stop manifesting, terrible relationships. I really did actually, and I needed them quickly. But ultimately, we recognize that it's no longer about manifesting things. It is about consciously participating in the co-creative process. I had somebody ask the other day, well, if I'm in the oneness, why would I need to do a manifestation? Why would I just not want to live in the oneness? And the point is, we can't help but manifest. We're constantly creating our lives. So we tend to hear that word, and I love what you said, OD'd on the word manifestation, Laura. I love that. I'm so over it.
Oh, for me, it's alchemy. This is within. This is a shift and a transformation within me. I'm not waiting to manifest things. Manifestation is happening all the time.
Right. And that's the point, right? Manifestation is the automatic nature of the universe. And we're constantly manifesting. We're constantly creating. What this does is allows us to engage with that consciously, deliberately, and move beyond the idea that any one particular thing is going to make us happy, but it's shifting our consciousness into that whole other idea. And ultimately, that is shifting our consciousness into our spiritual identity.
Beautiful. I want to continue with this. And I before we do that, though, I'd really love Diego to pop on the video that we have of Dr. Petra talking about consciousness from her perspective, I think very recently.
Quoted by Thomas Troward, quoted by Ernest Holmes, quoted by Sri Aurobindo. There's a powerful Hindu concept which modern physics, quantum physics, is beginning to suspect is completely true. That ancient Hindu concept is metaphorically represented in this statement. Consciousness sleeps in the rocks, waves in the grass, moves in the animals, and awakens in the human being. And we recognize that it awakens anywhere where self-consciousness begins to evolve, where self-consciousness begins to emerge. And our ancient Hebrew mystics from 5,000 years ago recognized and understood this truth when they said, we are made in the image and likeness. Actually, it's reported that God said, let us make us in our image and likeness. A recognition that the one infinite reality is so big that it takes gods to begin to point at the infinite nature of the one. And that we collectively are made in the image and likeness. Not that God is made in our image and likeness. Not that God was represented by a person named Jesus, but the recognition of the Christ consciousness, that realization of the one infinite. And you see the entire flow of evolution, the 13.8 billion years that it's taken to get us here, has been for the purpose of consciousness to evolve an organ in which consciousness could begin to see itself and be itself self-aware. You and me, and wherever self-awareness is emerging on our planet or in the galaxies.
Thank you so much for that. And that's just a reminder. I think a reminder to the question of the individual that asked you, why would I want to bother trying to manifest when I'm already one? Because we're a divine expression of the divine. And I see it that our mandate is to open up and to allow our soul to evolve back home to that place that it knows, where we can be that expression, that greater expression of ourselves right here and now on planet Earth. And why would we want to live a lesser expression?
Right. And I think that's what it means when we say we're light workers, we're bringers of light, we're raising consciousness on the planet, right? Because it is from that place where we recognize that we are consciousness revealing itself and experiencing itself as an individual. Up until a self-awareness, consciousness is creating in a sort of generic macrocosmic way. Again, it's Thomas Troward, who I quoted, right, who says, this is what comes out of the Hindus in the early stages of evolution. Life doesn't actually care about a particular tree. It just cares that trees continue to flourish and evolve, right? It cares about species and life growing. It's in the moment of self-awareness that consciousness goes, oh, wow, this is a creative thing that's happening here. Now I can participate in that, which is, of course, our ability to choose. And we're creating every single time we choose. Every time we are manifesting and creating something. We don't turn that on in a prayer. We don't, right? What we want to do is to ask ourselves, am I manifesting and creating from the deepest truth of who I am, from the deepest truth of what I know to be true about life, and from the deepest truth of the contribution that I, as that individualized manifestation of the one, can actually contribute. Right. And for each of us, that's different. You might contribute. You're contributing it here, doing a show like this. This is a significant contribution. And I know we have lovely Diego in the background who's contributing by doing the technology, which would be a disaster if I had to do that. It would be a complete disaster, right? But that's a contribution. And when we are awakening to this co-creative fact, then we stop we stop creating out of our human littleness. We start creating out of that greater identity. And now we can actually contribute something that is mind-bogglingly important and valuable, which is to evolve humanity in a way that the universe has evolved creation for life, right? We're now evolving human consciousness with every choice we make, every alignment every time we do prayer and we do alignment, we're evolving that consciousness. At least that's what I believe.
And so it is. And it came to me a couple of weeks ago that spiritual mind treatment is a creation story. Like every time I say a spiritual mind treatment, I'm participating in the creation story of this life, because I get to really bring myself into a pinpointed place of knowing who I am, and what God is and who I am. And I may not know that all the time. I mean, there are times when I lose the thread of that because we're all human. I'm a human being.
Oh, I never do. I never get angry. I'm never judgmental.
Don't you?
I'm never distracted. Oh, no, no, no.
Oh, I've got
Anybody
a lot of work
tells
to
you
do
that
then.
is lying through their teeth.
I was swearing at my daughter this morning, or about her. But anyway,
Of course, right? Of course. So we need our work to re-engage, re-center, remember.
Yeah.
What am I creating here? Am I creating a loving engagement with my daughter? Am I creating a loving environment? Am I right?
Exactly.
And so it's here. The work is always here and here. Right? When I think of consciousness, it's head and heart as a wholeness.
I did do a spiritual mind treatment afterwards. After I got myself into that place for about an hour, it was like,
yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
now's
Yes.
the time to pray on this, or to pray as this, knowing this,
Yes.
knowing the truth of this situation.
Right.
You know.
I love that.
So that's
thanks
where
for
we
sharing
get
that,
the
Laura.
Yeah, because that's what, I mean, if I didn't, then there'd be something wrong with me there, because it's like, okay, I don't have permission to go into that all the time, but I do have permission to really understand that I can come back to prayer.
Yes. Yeah. And how important that is, and how much that recenters and moves things forward and continues to create that outcome of a spiritually grounded life, which is, I mean, that's the biggest manifestation I can imagine, right? Well, who wouldn't want to manifest that? Who wouldn't want to be continually working to create a spiritually grounded life?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So let's talk about your books. I'm excited about the 3 books that you have written with Reverend Dr. Christian Sorensen.
Yes.
And they are, what I love about these books is that they all begin with one beautiful word, joy. Yes.
Yes.
It takes away that edge of this is hard work. This is this has to be a slog, and this has to be an experience of work that I'm going to have to use my brain and joy. Because ultimately, do you believe that is why we're here, to experience our life as joy?
I love the quote from Sri Aurobindo that Ernest Holmes repeats in many ways in The Science of Mind. Sri Aurobindo says that creation is for the delight of the divine. I do not subscribe to the school of thought that we are here to learn lessons, work out karma, heal from past things. I think all of those things do happen. We are engaged in those things, but that ultimately creation, all of creation, including the creation of an organ that can experience consciousness and make choices consciously, that it is about the delight of the divine. Otherwise, really, honest to God, why would, sunsets be so beautiful, sex so great, and babies so cute? I mean, really, why would we get so
in that order?
And why wouldn't we get so much joy out of when we're passionately engaged in building a business that we believe, like what you're doing here, that you believe in this, this program, or an art, or a business that's going to employ a whole boatload of people or create sustainability on the planet, right? And all of that creation, even in the midst of the creative process, there's joy in the using of our faculties and the giving of our gifts, and there's joy in the intimacy of friendship and really being with people that there's that kindred spirit. And I don't know how to pronounce the Danish word. In German it's called gemütlich, and it's that atmosphere of all of that. And why would we think the life would be about anything less than that? Yes, of course we have experiences that are less than that, but that's what calls our spiritual work forward. So Christian and I had a lot of conversation about what we wanted to do, and joy became the sort of guiding idea. The whole point is to create lives in which we experience our joy. This does not mean there's not effort. It doesn't mean we don't, sweat occasionally. It doesn't mean that we don't bring all of our faculties to bear on something. But the point is to have delight in it and to stop feeling ourselves flawed and broken. We are not flawed and broken. We're not. The spiritual truth of who we are has never been damaged. And that's the place we want to come from, not out of hubris or better than, because not only is that true about us, that's true about every single other person too. So it's not about superior or, or arrogant, any of that. It's a recognition of who and what we really are. So I love that you love that, because we love that too.
Yeah, I love that. And I wonder if Diego could pop up the images for us here so that people can see that these books are on Amazon and they're easy. They're actually journals.
They're journals, right? 365.
They're journals. Yeah, I love that, because we can participate in our own growth with this kind of work.
Yes. We have the first one was the Joyous Freedom Journal. The second one is this Joyous Living Journal. And then the third one is the Joyous Abundance Journal.
Okay.
And so, so different areas. And because that's each time it was like, okay, what's up? What's up in our own lives? What might be of value to people? And so freedom, right? The freedom to create, the freedom to be ourselves, and so often we are afraid of that. And we think it'll be judged, or it was judged somewhere along the line in our childhood or whatever, right? The joyous freedom to be the truth of who we are, not only spiritual beings and that oneness made manifest, but then also the unique individual that we are. There they are. They're the three, right?
There they are.
There they are. And each one of them has, some inspiration, but then there's a place to journal in it, to write your thought about it. Like, what do I think about this? How could I take this up? And then an affirmation for the day. So they each have 365 pieces in them. And it was really a joy to write and a joy to work with and to do these projects.
That's beautiful. And I want to thank you for bringing them into our experience, into my experience. I'm going to look at them a bit more and order one of them and get going on it, because I think there's no greater thing than to actually sit down and self-inquire in a really positive and powerful way. And that's part of spirit. That's a huge part of spiritual growth, is to, I think for many it can be, I'll do that, yeah, okay, next week, yeah, okay. We have to make a commitment, don't we, in order to have this growth. To pray, it means actually, well, do it. Yes. Just do it.
Right. To do it consistently and regularly. And sometimes to do it when you're not even sure, well, what shall I do it about? I reflect on I occasionally get the comment, I'm doing my meditation and I'm now in the oneness. Why should I even do spiritual mind treatment? What I need to manifest about? I have 3 prayer partners. We talk every week. And I promise you that we never, ever have a day where we say, I don't have a request. I don't have a prayer request.
No.
Right. And it's from everything from, I want to show up as a good leader at CSL Dallas through the pandemic to, I am imagining that working with my granddaughter and her growth and my partner, my wife, who's, illness or, there's just if for everything. Sometimes it's just pure gratitude. I'm having a snapshot. I call it take a mantle snapshot. I'm having one of those snapshot moments. Everything in my life is flowing. I feel like a lot of things have come to the forefront. They've come together. I'm in the flow. Let's just do a spiritual mind treatment just on gratitude and how amazing all of this is coming together. I've never not had something that I wanted to do spiritual work about. But it's a practice. It's a disciplined practice, and to just start doing it. It's like exercise. We can think about it. We can talk about it. We can intellectualize about it. We can know how important it is. That's all that. And then we have to do it.
And then we have to do it.
And let me also say, too, which I think is really important, keep starting. Just keep starting. right? You do it for a few days and then you don't. And then you do it for a few weeks and then you don't. You do it for a month or two and then you don't. And you do it for, I mean, I know when my son was born, I don't think I actually sat down and meditated and did a spiritual mind treatment for probably 9 months after he was born. He was very, very, very colicky baby. It was very challenging. I was mostly on my own, and so I just restarted, right? And I think that we think, well, if I didn't do it yesterday, well, somehow whatever, right? Just keep restarting, and it becomes not only a habit, but it's like, I don't know. It's like, when Jesus said, drink of the living waters, man, that's what spiritual mind treatment is for me. We're drinking of the living waters of spiritual truth. And so just come back to it, and no shame, no blame. We all have moments and days and weeks and months and even years when we're not doing it as regularly. No shame, no blame. Just start again, really. And it will continue to grow,
because there's nothing and nobody judging us in that moment. And starting whenever we enter into prayer, we're at the beginning. We're in the beginning, starting again. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you this question, because I know that for me, I know that I have been taught, and that there are two ways of, in that realization phase or stage, that we can argue through it and we can realize it, or we can do a combination of both. Do you believe, which one for you, if any, has been the most profound? Have you had the most profound experience of prayer, or do you not is there no line between the two? Because I know when I've gone into spiritual mind treatment and argumentative treatment, when I didn't do that for a long time, I was always just realizing, and then one day I thought, hang on a minute, there are things I'm not quite obviously in line with here or open to. I'm going to go into this argumentative way of treating, and it was very powerful for me.
Yes, really I love that. I love that you say that, Laura, because I use them both. I use them interchangeably. I use them based on exactly what you said. How fully do I actually already believe this? If I'm already in a place where I'm like, yeah, this is good, I'm just going to juice the seed, I'm just going to juice the mental equivalent that I'm creating with my spiritual mind treatment, then it's a realization treatment, because I'm already there. What I'm doing is putting some very clear intentionality around it, some clear co-creative engagement with it. But if it's something that I'm having a little bit of I don't know, and how's this going to work out, and I'm not really sure I'm up to it, and all of that, then the argumentative treatment really reminds me of why I can say this is true. And I expect this to, come out this way. And so, so I think of it as a little bit, like we have in our toolbox, we have a Phillips head screwdriver and we have a straight head screwdriver.
Oh, I love this.
What do we say? One screwdriver is better than the other? No, we use the tool for whatever is needed. We could even go so far as to say we have a screwdriver and a hammer. Yeah. If all you do is walk around with a hammer, what's this saying? Everything looks like a nail. Some of them are actually screws.
They
need a screwdriver. Hello, right? And so this whole argument about, when we're really spiritual, all we do is realization treatment, and we don't really have to, I just think that's all nonsense.
I've never heard that, actually.
Yes.
I will get there anyhow.
I think we have to use both techniques, and sometimes, and especially if we have doubt, or if we have our own uncertainty. There, like everybody has certain areas of our life we just get. Like for me, I know that I'm always abundantly supplied. I've never questioned that. So anytime I do treatment around abundance, then it's always from that realization place. Now, relationships, that's an entirely different story. Entirely different story. And so I often, if I'm working, well, when I first started working on years ago, I started working on I'm in a healthy relationship, because clearly I had no clue as to what that looked like. And I had all kinds of false beliefs. I had the way my parents looked. I had lots of evidence that, my relationships just were terrible. And I was the reason why they were terrible. And so I did a lot of argumentative treatment. No, love is the truth of my being.
Yes.
And it is coming, it is showing up. And I'm attracting out of love. I deny that I'm continuing to attract out of an old pattern. That I'm cutting that pattern off. I'm saying no, right? I mean, I had to do that work really seriously, because in relationship, I didn't know, it wasn't in that place of, oh yeah, I get this. And so, I'm pretty passionate about this idea I'm very passionate about the idea that there's only one way to do spirituality, or that it's more spiritual to allow spirit to move through us than it is to declare our truth, or it's more spiritual to create. And we're all different. We're all at different parts of our spiritual process and our spiritual growth. And what we're facing is different for each of us, and how we take it up. And I think it's really important that we have a lot of different tools in our toolkit.
I don't know where to begin with that, because there's so many questions I have, just responses and highlights from what you've just said. And I'm really grateful that I asked that question, and that you've responded in the way and answered in that way, because we're all on this amazing adventure at the place where we're at. I mean, sometimes I do hear, I mean, I have never heard that about, the argumentative process not being, or formula not being as observed as correct, in the spiritual community. And we're all doing the best that we can. And for some, even to sit down and start praying, or to start meditating, or to start accepting this this idea of oneness. We all begin where we begin, and I think as a movement, Science of Mind, we have this opportunity now to reach people where they are, not where we think they should be.
Yes.
Where they are. And sometimes that means just going right back to basics and allowing what is, and making prayer as simple as possible, so that anyone can take part and empower themselves and transform their lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
I could not agree with that more. And even to the point of, sometimes we're not ready for prayer. Sometimes we're so in it that all we can do is an affirmation. If that's all you can do, just start there. Just to give yourself something to grab onto, so that the brain doesn't keep spinning out on the whatever has, that we've spun out on. And then we can move into, okay, I think maybe now I can actually try to get my mind around doing a spiritual mind treatment around this. Yes, I really believe that it's really important. It's important, and it's important for folks that are new to Science of Mind. It's also important for those of us who've been around for a long time. We can forget our basics and become, I think, so esoteric that we forget that when in those moments where we have forgotten who we are, there are a whole plethora of tools that we can use. And spiritual mind treatment, then sometimes it can be a very short and concrete, and I'm it's like an extended affirmation. And other times it's we move ourselves into this space of realization where we're hanging out with the consciousness of truth, and both are equally as valuable. And where people are, that's where they are, right? That's where they're starting. And I'm sorry, got distracted there for a moment.
That's okay.
And that, that's so, and I have a lot to say about this. I'm so glad you brought this up.
So am
I think that compassion is so important. Having compassion for ourselves and for others, to really have compassion for where we're at, what's going on, being discipline does not mean ungentle. We so often think of discipline as punishment. I'm going to make myself do it. Well, I am going to make
Yeah.
myself do it, but I can make myself do it compassionately instead of in some, kind of angry way or painful way. That discipline can be very, very compassionate. Really, Petra, I love you enough. I'm going to sit you down right now, and we're going to have a moment of spiritual realization about this thing, whatever this thing. I mean, I say that to myself sometimes. No, we're going to just sit down here for a minute because you've spun out on something, whatever it is, and that can be done and so we can do that with others and be very compassionate with wherever they're at. We've all been there. That's the other thing is, oh my God, when I see that in someone else, I'm like, oh, I recognize that. Oh my gosh, I can feel the feeling, and I can put myself like right back there, and I know how that feels, and I'm so sorry that you're having that experience, right? I don't say that out loud, but I'm like, oh my God. And right when we can do that, like there's such compassion because we've been that person before.
And we've not been taught, have we? I'm sorry, I cut you off there.
Good.
It's just we've not been taught, as a collective, to have compassion for ourselves, especially when it comes to religion, faith, spirituality. There are so many kind of unsaid rules and rituals and boundaries and how it should be and how it shouldn't be, that when it comes to this idea that we can sit down or stand up and be within ourselves and cultivate this beautiful connection that is already always here, and not have to do it from a place of fear, from love. That's a whole other idea for us to bring into our hearts, isn't it? And for some, that it takes time. For me, I know it took time. Like you said, it took time to get to that place of, this is okay, I can love myself in this. There's no one watching me saying, make it better, make it stronger, make it work. It's in my own time.
Right. Well, I grew up Roman Catholic, and I can tell you that when I was 13, we moved into a house after my mother remarried. We moved into a house, and I remember standing in my new bedroom wondering which corner the eye of God was, and literally feeling like I was perpetually being watched and judged. And what a place to be in. And of course, that was also not only religious, but also, very Germanic family, and very much, why did you get the A- in the middle of all the A's, and, all that kind of stuff. And to really find that place of compassion. And so, and part of that compassion is not only can I love myself, but I can learn who I am. So for me, one of the places where I have really connected to the oneness and really embodied the first stage of spiritual mind treatment, which is the recognition that there is this oneness and some truths about it, which I'm now going to use in the prayer. I found them not on the meditation cushion, or even in spiritual mind treatment, or even in my classes. I found them walking in nature.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that was eye-opening, because it felt like what I was being taught was, you must meditate and you must do spiritual mind treatment. Well, I wanted to do those things, but there was this whole piece missing. And I know other people, they find that the flow that comes in spiritual mind treatment, when we're really, really in the flow of it, they find it on their yoga mat. And that's it opens something, and it's so transferable, right? And we're visual people, we're audio people, and we're kinesthetic people. Those are all the ways in which we engage, right? So I am both a kinesthetic and audio person, are my two primary modes of learning. So why did doing spiritual mind treatment out loud work for me? Because I was hearing my own treatment, and it kept me on track. Right. Why did walking in nature work for me? Because I'm kinesthetic. So I was moving my body.
Experiencing it.
and I was experiencing it. And so if we can also have compassion for the fact that, I mean, I also have I have a challenge when somebody says, I'm going to teach you this way to do it. And if you will do it this way, it'll change your life and you must do it. You must follow it. Well, that's what worked for that person. Give me an outline. Give me that's what spiritual mind treatment is. It's kind of an outline of how to shift consciousness, but then we find our own entrance into it based on, and again, I think of that as a compassionate stance to recognize that I am actually I'm unique. And so I am going to engage. I like the tools, I like learning how to play the scales, but I might improv when I finally get to improv. I might improv jazz. You learn the scales, you start playing Bach and Beethoven, and then you start improving rock and roll. It's all music, right? And but that music comes out of us. And yet the tool is the same. The instrument and the scales, those are the same. And yet we then enter into it from our own selves.
And what I'm hearing is that we are each unique divine expressions of the one. And so it's never going to be the same for anybody. And I mean, here people have come onto the Cosmic Prayer, beautiful teachers, leaders, musicians, and everybody has their own idea of what prayer is and what's, Ava came on 6 months ago and she danced her way through through prayer, and it was like, yes, this is how Ava experiences is the oneness for herself. It feels as if we're allowing ourselves to know what Ernest Holmes created, and to now take it even one stage further and to come away from a doctrine of how spiritual mind treatment should be. Let's do it in our individualistic ways. Let's pray in the way where we feel it. Because for him, he felt it in a certain way and taught it in a certain way. Right. And that's how we've been taught as practitioners and ministers to come into it from this way. But we can expand into our own joy of it. Yes. I love it. It's like playing with it.
And playing with it. And the structure itself is so powerful. It's like the structure of scales. And you know that if you change the sharps and flats, you're going to have a minor scale. It's going to sound different. You're going to have a major scale. That's going to sound different. You use it in different ways, but the structure is the same. And so you can dance a spiritual mind treatment as much as you can paint it or walk it or sing it or speak it or right. And so some people, they are very flowery in their prayers. And other people are like, oh, I'm not that flowery. So then they don't want to say it. Right. But what if you're going to use science? What if you're going to use your spiritual mind treatment? In your spiritual mind treatment, you're going to talk about the quantum field and the matrix and how and how much that's the oneness, and recognizing that I am the place where the particle is popping in. Right? You can do that. Why does it have to be religious language, spiritual language? It's another way of entering into it from our own uniqueness. So I use a lot of nature metaphors. I use a lot of science metaphors. I use very little spiritual language. I use no biblical scripture at all. I actually seldom use, I occasionally use a phrase from Ernest Holmes or Emerson, some of the people that I've read a lot, but it's science and nature that make it real for me. And that's the point. What makes it real for us? This work we're doing to shift consciousness. How do we make it real? That's the whole point. We have to make what we're saying to ourselves or experiencing, we have to make it real. The moment it makes it real. And I loved what you said, Laura. I'm stealing it. Spiritual mind treatment is like the beginning of the creation story.
Yes. I had to get to that place in me of, I had to work that one through and sit with it and understand the brilliance of Ernest Holmes. It's like, wow, he's taken us back to the creation story with a spiritual mind treatment.
Yes.
This is another show, though, because I'm aware that we've got 5 minutes left.
Okay.
And Diego is, thank you, Diego, for for being here and for being present and for putting the flow of the banners and the pictures and everything for Dr. Petra on the Cosmic Prayer. We're on New Thought Media Network, and I know that you have loved this experience watching it. I have. Absolutely, so totally inspired by Dr. Petra Weldes, who I really would love to come back and talk about science and prayer. Science,
I'd love to.
That was on my list. We only just reached it at the end. Here's the website for CSL Dallas, and I know that Dr. Petra and her wife Karen Fry, Reverend Karen, have a thriving community over so many years, sharing their gifts of knowing of spirituality and science of mind and new thought, and bringing it to their community. And I'm sure their community is absolutely in love. I'm sure they are just in love with everything you do, because if I lived in Dallas, I would be there listening to you every week. But now I'm online. I've found you online, so that's it. There's no excuse, Laura. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Petra. And by the way, I must just say, if you're listening and you love New Thought Media Network, there is a donate button underneath, because we know the law of reciprocity is working. And when we're giving, we're showing our prosperity by being in that flow and activating it. So the link is down below, newthoughtmedia.org. Feel free to connect with your heart and ask yourself, has this fed me spiritually today? And if it's a yes, be bold and donate. And Dr. Petra, I would love to invite you to speak a spiritual mind treatment right now.
Great. I would love to do that. About anything in particular?
Whatever is on your heart, in your heart, whatever you feel right now after this conversation.
Well, I will tell you that one of my primary spiritual mind treatment practices right now is to treat for humanity's awakening. There seems to be a number of things that we need to wake up to: the climate, the what we're doing with the climate, and with inequity and social injustice. And so I would make that the focus of my spiritual mind treatment. Does that work for you, Laura?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Beautiful.
So we just invite us. You can close your eyes if you choose. It's not required. You don't have to, but it certainly helps me stay present and centered. So just inviting us to take that first centering breath. And as I feel that breath bringing me to center that is everywhere, that has no circumference, the infinite nature of the one, that transcendent mystery, that ultimate reality from which all creation flows. The impulse of life is forever moving into creation, and that impulse is spirit, the divine, seeking to express itself with delight and joy and fullness. And what I recognize about this one infinite reality is that it is consciousness, and it is the consciousness behind all of creation. And that consciousness has found its place of awakening in myself, in Laura, in Diego, in each and every person who listens to this show, each and every being, human being, self-aware being on this planet or anywhere in the galaxy. So I turn my attention right now to humanity, to the human beings that share this beautiful blue jewel, planet Earth. And I recognize that humanity is a place where consciousness is evolving and growing, where consciousness is becoming aware of itself through me and through each and every one of us. And because I know this is the truth, how effortless it is to affirm that consciousness is awakening to itself, awakening to the co-creative power, awakening to the outcome of choices, awakening to the recognition that some choices actually are more in alignment with life, with love, with peace, with joy, with growth, with beauty. And that as consciousness reveals itself in this awakening, these choices are made in alignment with spiritual truth, spiritual awareness, regardless of any religion or tradition or spirituality or not, in alignment with life. Life for life, love for love, growth for growth, joy for joy. That it is the awakening of consciousness within each and every human being, within humanity as a whole, especially in our leaders, political leaders, business leaders, environmental leaders, social justice leaders, leaders of thought, leaders everywhere. Awakening to the power of choice, awakening to the co-creative process, and awakening to this impress and impulse of life and love. And that it is for the delight of the divine. And so I recognize and realize the emerging awakening that results in more equity around the planet, in care for our environment, in a restoration of so many ways and places for the planet to recenter, resettle, for our climate to rest in a good balance, for people to be cared for, nourished, have enough food and shelter, and more than enough to express their own lives. How good it is to know that this is the automatic and natural outcome of spirit revealing itself in, through, and as each one of us. And so as I declare for this awakening, I declare for the visible results and the guidance, the intuition, the intelligence that gets us from here to there. Releasing any need to know how, releasing any need to know what, I simply rest in the calm confidence and the assurance that this is in fact happening right now in consciousness. It is already done. And the manifestation is in fact assured. It is guided by love, guided by intelligence, guided by wisdom. Divine right action is taking place. And because I know this, I have deep gratitude. I have such gratitude to know that this is happening. And this is the creative word which the law must now make manifest. Grateful to know that it is already so. I let it go. I let it be. And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you for listening to Cosmic Prayer, your weekly shift with Laura Topper on the New Thought Media Network. If you've enjoyed this programming, please tell a friend and join us again next week for Cosmic Prayer, your weekly shift with Laura Topper.